Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. I want to tune in for where that picture of Susan is tuning in from. It's got to be Radha Kund. Look at her. The picture's amazing. Thank you very much, Ananda Bihar. You're always a generous host, and it's amazing to be with the Vaishnavas in the morning. So thank you. Very, very grateful. I'll begin with the reading of, we're in chapter or Canto 10, text 3, text 42 and 43. Omaganyatimirandasya Gananjanan Chalaka Chakshun Militamena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha. Chaitanya Manobishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swakadamayam Dadati Svaparantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Parakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha. He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dina Bandho Jagat Pisha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namotsute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Brindavaneshwari Vrishabhanasute Devi Prananami Hari Priye Panchakalpa Tarubhistya Kripa Sindhube Vicha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Dvaita Gadadhar Srivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram 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 Hare Hare. And to honor Srila Prabhupada, Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prishtaya Bhutare Shimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Nityanamane Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Pastyata Deshatarine. The Western world, here we are. Srila Prabhupada brought these to Pastyata Desh. I'll share my screen so we can all see it. And today is going to be story hour. Or story half hour. A lot of stories. I'm going to read a lot of stories. They're not mine, but they're worthy of being heard. So we'll start with the Bhagavatam. Anand Bihari, I heard you did a nice job yesterday on the Sanskrit with Bhima Prabhu. So you want to let it rip again? Am I getting darshan of Gorshan's back with the Kiko's phone? I think so.
Speak a little louder.
Go ahead.
That was Akashvani. I reside in Akashvani. Akash Adi. Would you like me to do the Sanskrit?
Please.
Okay. Tayorvam punar evaham adityam asha kashyapat upendra iti vikyato vamanatvacha vamanaha. Did I do okay?
You did great. We got one more.
Okay. Trityesmin bhave ham vai tenaiva vapushatavam jato bhuva yashtayoreva satyam me vyahritam sati.
Beautiful. Thank you. So we'll read the translations in the translation in the next millennium. This is
Giridhari, if you turn it down a little. If Giridhari speaks louder, we can hear him. We hear Nanda Bihari okay.
Yeah, you don't hear me correctly. You don't hear me properly.
We can hear okay.
Okay. I'm sorry because there's a sleeping child, so I cannot speak too loud. Translation: in the next millennium, I again appeared from the two of you. This is Krishna speaking to his wonderful mother and father. I again appeared from the two of you who appeared as my mother, Aditya, and my father, Kasyapa. They're having a conversation because they're revealing that we've done this before. I was known as Upendra, and because of being a dwarf, I was also known as Vamana. O Supreme Chaste Mother, I, the same personality, have now appeared of you both as your son for the third time. Take my words as the truth. Powerful last sentence there. Take my words. I have to hear it from Krishna. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. The Supreme Personality of Godhead chooses a mother and father from whom to take birth again and again. The Lord took birth originally from Sutapa and Prishni, then from Kashyapa and Aditi, and again from the same father and mother, Vasudeva and Devaki. Quotations: in other appearances also, the Lord said, I took the form of an ordinary child just to become your son so that we could reciprocate eternal love. So we could reciprocate eternal love. Jiva Goswami has explained this verse in his Krishna Sandarbha 96th chapter, where he notes, imagine Prabhupada, or imagine the translators just reading these wonderful texts and putting all of these things together. Jiva Goswami has explained this verse in Krishna Sandarbha 96th chapter, where he notes, in text 37, the Lord says, Amuna Vapusa, meaning by this same form. In other words, the Lord told Devaki, this time I have appeared in my original form as Sri Krishna. The Jiva Goswami says that the other forms were part expansions of the Lord's original form, but because of the in Sutapa, the Lord appeared from Devaki and Vasudeva in his full opulence as Sri Krishna. In this verse, the Lord confirms same Supreme Personality of Godhead, but I appear in full opulence as Sri Krishna. This is the purport of the words Tenava Vapusa. When the Lord mentioned the birth of Krishnagarbha, he did not say Tenava Vapusa, but he assured Devaki that in the third birth, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna, had appeared, not his partial expansion. Krishnagarbha and Vamana were partial expansions of Krishna, but in his third birth, Krishna himself appeared. This is the explanation given in Sri Krishna Sandarbha by Srila Jiva Goswami. Take my words as the truth. I just want to highlight that as we go into this. So now, I said it's going to be story hour because it's such a beautiful and intimate and powerful place that we are in the Bhagavatam, and to speak about Krishna it's so wonderful and it's so purifying, exciting, but we need access to him, and we always go through the devotees to get access to Sri Krishna. And the intimacy of this is just so profound because, as we know, spiritual life is a refinement of our desires. It's a refinement of them, and the intimacy just gets deeper and deeper and deeper and more intense. And this, Bhima Prabhu, you are looking fantastic. Love this. Talk about intimacy. We're in his car. We're in that F-150 or whatever that is. This is good. F-250, yeah. He's gotta take care of those horses. So the intimacy just gets more and more intense. And this is the story. I'm going to tell a story since we are geographically located in New York with the Bhakti Center. I'm going to tell a bit of a story of the devotees who were there because of the level of intimacy. Now, there's a story that Bhakti Lakta, Ganesham Prabhu's wife, likes to tell, where she did a survey of the Gurukulis, and she was teaching the Gurukulis in Mayapur, and she had different grades, and she asked them, if you could come back at any time in Lord Krishna or in Lord Chaitanya's or any time with Srila Prabhupada, what would be the time that you would want to take birth? It's so interesting, right? She's asking the Gurukulis, when do you want to come back? What do you want to experience? And she said the vast majority of them, this is very interesting, they said, I want to be there at 26 2nd Avenue. I want to be there with Srila Prabhupada. And I found that to be incredibly exciting, that desire to be there at 26 2nd Avenue when things were very intimate. And I want to share some intimate pastimes from there from Janaki Devi. I've recently fell in love with this book. It's called a bond of love. And it's the story of all of the female disciples of Srila Prabhupada. And they do these short little stories. This is going to take about 5 minutes. And I pray that the ears and the hearts are open to hear this story. In the late summer of 1966, when she was 21, Janaki was initiated in 26 Second Avenue. She was Srila Prabhupada's first female disciple. Janaki. Mukunda and I were traveling and planning to go to India. We got passports, visas, and shots. Then Mukunda comes home and says, I met a guru down the street. I was skeptical. A guru on the Bowery? So we went to hear Prabhupada, and it was difficult to understand his dialect. On a piece of paper, he wrote words for us to sing. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. But it was hard for me because I had no idea what I was singing. Anyway, the third time we went, we told him we were going to India. He said, I can give you what you want to find in India. After that, I saw him walking alone down the street, a blaze of saffron walking at me in the middle of the Bowery stench. I went up to him. He smiled and I said, hey, do you remember me? He said, yes, of course I do. I said, oh, it's so nice to see you. We live 1 block up the street. So he started coming to our house once a week or more. He'd instruct me, when I visit, it's proper for you to offer me food. I didn't have any food in the house because Mukunda and I ate once a day in a macrobiotic restaurant, so I offered him orange juice. Prabhupada asked questions about the United States and the practice of boys and girls and why Mukunda and I lived together without getting married. He wanted to understand how America worked in a societal way. A couple of times we took walks together, which was lovely. He'd carry his umbrella. His robes would flow in the breeze, and he had this intoxicatingly delicious patchouli sandalwood smell. Being next to him was always fabulous. Sometimes his robes touched me from the breeze, and they felt soft and luscious, just like Prabhupada. Prabhupada shared this huge empty loft with a crazy young man, and in his part of that loft, he held regular classes in kirtans. After going through the dark, dank hallway, we'd open his door, look across the room, and there'd be Prabhupada sitting on a funny little platform and playing kartals with the light bulb hanging from the ceiling over his head. He hung his robes from a clothesline to define his living quarters. He had a bed on the floor, a small sit-down desk, and a schoolroom-type chalkboard. And he gave us Sanskrit classes. He taught us how to play kartals, and he liked us to come, and Mukunda and I came regularly. Mukunda took it to like a leaf floating in water, but I was more distrustful and nervous, so I went slowly. So when his crazy roommate got crazier, could you come live with us? And I said, no, that's not a good idea. We can't do that, which escalated him to getting the apartment at 26 Second Avenue. Then he said the society needed to be incorporated. Mukunda was the secretary. I was going to be the treasurer. And then when Prabhupada initiated, it blew me out of the tub. I recently came to NYC from Portland, and I saw very odd behavior there. 1966 was the apex of intense change. Prabhupada's apartment was the size of a large closet, and he made a good-sized fire in the middle of that room. Initiates, including Mukunda, were around me, and I was the only female. Bananas were going in the fire, charcoal putting on our bodies, incantations. It was extremely hot. Afterwards, I left there by myself. I needed to walk the streets and get my feet back under me. Prabhupada finally told Mukunda and me we shouldn't be living together, so it'd be proper for us to get married, which was fine with me. I was a product of the 50s, and being married was the right thing to do. So Prabhupada told me, you'll become the goddess of the home, and that's important. That will be your domain, and you will rule it. You'll cook prasadam and take care of your husband. He was explaining that women are not powerless in their environment, and that we have a lot of responsibility and a lot of freedom to invent how we want to initiate that domain ruling. He told me that my wedding saree needed to be red silk, and so I picked it out, and Mukunda and I bought it together. It wasn't inexpensive, and it was beautiful. Wonderfully soft silk with gold threads. Prabhupada wrapped me in the sari so it stayed on. Can you imagine Prabhupada wrapping him in the sari? Wrapping her in the sari is amazing. That was the only sari in ISKCON for a while, and then the other brides wore it as well. Yamuna, Malati. It became an instrumental of our sisterhood. I had my mother's wedding ring, and I gave that to Yamuna and Malati when they got married too. The cooking for our wedding was important. Fortunately, I asked my sister in Oregon if she wanted to come, Yamuna. It was a big thing to go to New York, but she flew out, put her to work in the kitchen. Meanwhile, I was buying big Indian earrings, making garlands for Prabhupada, Mukunda, and me, and decorating the room from corner to corner with boughs of evergreens. In some ways, the wedding was like the initiation. Big fire in the middle of the room, fruits put in the fire, 20, 30 people in the room, people stand in the hallway. Prabhupada tied my end of the sari to Mukunda's chadar and said, "Stay tied for 7 days." It was a wonderful atmosphere. For our honeymoon, Mukunda and I planned to go to my aunt's house near Crater Lake. As long as you're going there, Prabhupada said, see about a temple in San Fran. My sister Joan, Maurice, Mukunda, my black cat Sketzelbrenzer piled into a drive-away car to visit our friends Melanie and Sam, aka Malati and Shamsundar. Anyway, you get the idea of the story of how that all came about. So now she begins to speak a bit about Prabhupada's personality. His personality was always wonderful. Those were happy days for me because I had a lot of personal, informal contact with him. If I wanted him to taste something, mashed potatoes with butter or whipped cream, he'd come down the hallway barefoot and be delighted to experience these things. Likewise, he taught me things in the kitchen that were fabulously wonderful, like how to make puris puff up. Once I offered him an artichoke and said, "Here, I'll show you, Swamiji." I plucked off a leaf, dipped it in the butter, pulled it through my teeth, and said, "Now you try it." He tried a few leaves and he said, "So much trouble?" To make Krishna's surprise, I mixed together whipped cream, pineapple, mandarin oranges, cherry, and some rice and brought it to him. "Try this, Swamiji." He liked it and said, "What is it?" I hesitated. I thought a moment and I said, "It's Krishna's surprise." Prabhupada said, "Yes." And that became one of our staples. Another time I put 2 or 3 little cocktail parasols made in Japan on his plate. Srila Prabhupada looked up, smiled, and said, "Yes." Radharani also knew the art of serving Krishna, so he was pleased. He was so pleased he would taste everything simply by his glance. Prabhupada encouraged us in many ways. Once, the mailman came in with an aerogram from India. This was exotic and exciting. Malante and I ran upstairs, knocked on his door. He came to the door. "Swamiji, you have a letter from India." He took it and said, "Yes." I said, "Swamiji, aren't you going to read it?" He opened the letter, read it, folded it up. I said, "Swami, good news?" "Yes," he said, "my sister has died." Malati and I looked at each other. "That's good news?" He said, "She was a devotee of Krishna. She's gone back to Godhead." We got a glimpse of the new world we were entering. He started reminiscing about his sister with tears in his eyes. There was a great deal of love between those two Vaishnavas. Prabhupada offered us a wealth of learning and taught us in overt and covert ways. We learned that death was not a bad thing or to be feared. And we learned that he could reminisce and have great emotion about his sister, yet be happy she'd gone back to Godhead. Prabhupada never quit teaching us. I was at the window when the mridanga first arrived, and he got so excited he was twirling around the room waiting for it to come upstairs. Then he ran into the hallway. He couldn't wait to get his hands on that drum. He sat down, started playing happily, and afterwards he ripped the end of his dhoti to wrap the mridanga up. So I'll fast forward one little section here. Some time went by, and we heard that Prabhupada had a heart attack. He was extremely sick and may not live, so we started chanting and didn't stop for almost 24 hours. We chanted so hard and intensely while looking at Jagannath deities and thinking about Prabhupada that the deities started dancing. It was phenomenal. I turned to Malati with tears in my eyes and I said, "They are real." I was one with them in that. There was no physical, material interruption between the chanting, the deities, and me. We all chanted, and Prabhupada survived. We got some royal accommodations for him at Stinson Beach. He got lots of rest, good prasadam, recuperated there. Wow, San Fran was the time of new beginnings, where our innocence was coupled with great enthusiasm and unbridled decorations of our spirit. So to conclude, my cat Sketzelbrenner's favorite place was Prabhupada's bathtub, where he'd sleep. I'd hear, "Janaki, come and get your cat." And I go down and scoop Sketzelbrenner out of the bathtub. Prabhupada was patient about Sketzelbrenner in his bathtub, but at some point suggested we should free ourselves from that cat. I had a miscarriage and I got pregnant again. And Prabhupada initially told me, you must do what the doctors say. Stay off your feet and mind them. Because he knew I wasn't good at minding people, he also said, but if you don't have this baby, that's all right. I was really sad and sick. He said, don't hold on to that sadness. Let it go, because maybe you're not supposed to be pregnant. After 3 miscarriages, I decided he was right. It was a clear sign and I was finished having children. Prabhupada said, maybe you should go to your Aunt Edna and let her take care of you. And I did that. I went to the Lake of the Woods, wrote to Prabhupada from there, and he counseled me like a father. He told me Krishna didn't want me to be pregnant at that point, and there's nothing you can do. You're powerless to do anything about it. Ultimately, it's up to Krishna. When I first went to him, I was crying, but he wasn't patting me on the head, saying, oh, I'm sorry for you. He wasn't foolishly sentimental. He was instructive and kept me moving forward. Later, he said, go to London. So we did. We celebrated Jamashtami on the way. And then when I got to London, I had to make lots of prasadam. I was disciplined in the kitchen, strictly following Prabhupada's rules, no snacking or tasting in the kitchen, keeping everything clean, not enjoying the prasadam before it was offered to Radha and Krishna. After some time, I got tired of temple politics and the need to bow to men all the time. It seemed like men were taking over. They weren't injecting into Krishna consciousness something that wasn't really Krishna conscious. It got to the point where I had to leave the movement. I went into Prabhupada's room and I said I was leaving. And he said, are you sure you have to leave? Is there nothing that I can do? I said, no. There's nothing you can do. I have to leave. He asked me to take care of myself and said that no matter where I was, he would pray for me and that there was always a place for me. I could come back anytime I wanted. And he cried. So this is such a beautiful pastime here with Srila Prabhupada. I skipped one part that's even more sweet, where she mentions that he took a bit of whipping cream that was sweetened with sugar, and it was wonderful. And he ate it in the kitchen. She said, Prabhupada, you're eating in my kitchen? And he just smiled. So the intensity is increased with this personalism. And we're hearing from Sri Krishna at this point saying, listen, take my words as the truth. I came to you 3 different times. And you just wonder, I know I wonder, what is the heart of a devotee like a Janaki, whose fondest and deepest and most powerful memories are of this intimacy and that longing for that experience or those exchanges again. Over time, when it's real and it's true and it's based off of service and love, just gets more and more deep and more profound. It's such a powerful thing, because when we have those experiences, then we can see that there's nothing left for us, as they say. There's nothing left for us besides having those personal and intimate and deep and loving exchanges with these great personalities, and in our own personal bhajan and spiritual life, are longing to connect to this most great personality, Shri Krishna, who exemplifies these amazing qualities. I love reading this book because I start to understand, just by hearing about Srila Prabhupada's qualities, I start to understand a little bit more what Krishna must be like when we read about the 64 qualities of Krishna. You hear this a lot about Prabhupada. In this book particularly, you'll hear that he was just so beautiful. Like I don't know, I can't give a percentage, but many times you'll hear he was the most beautiful person I've ever met. He was just so beautiful. He's the most beautiful person I've ever met. He's just so beautiful. And he's so effulgent. He was so beautiful. And you're talking about somebody north of 70. And you're saying, wow, this is amazing that we're thinking of beauty as being youthful or whatever it may be. But now he's carrying this quality of beauty. What to speak of somebody like Shri Krishna, who's youthful and is carrying that quality of beauty? What does that do to someone to have darshan of Shri Krishna? What does it do to someone to meditate upon that beautiful form of Krishna? to meditate on those qualities of Krishna. And so one thing that is always very pleasing to do is to read about some of these different qualities that Krishna emanates. And I'll read a few of those that to me are just, they're fantastic because they remind me of who I'm attempting to connect to on a daily basis. So Krishna is, I chose a few of the 64 qualities. He's a wonderful linguist, a wonderful linguist. And Bhima Prabhu, you're helping me to understand this with the animal husbandry. Is a person who knows language in different countries, also Sanskrit, can talk to the devatas and also the animals, can understand the language of the animals. This is someone who's a wonderful linguist. He's ever youthful, right? 15 years, 2 months, 7.5 days. He's got these different leelas, but he stays ever youthful. He's talks pleasingly. And this is a quality that I just appreciate so much. He's a person who speaks pleasingly, even with the enemy, just to pacify him. Someone who can talk pleasingly. So he went to Kaliya after he had crushed him, and he said, even though I gave you severe punishment, please don't be dissatisfied with me. He's always conscious of every living being. He's highly intelligent. He has a sharp memory and fine decision. Intelligence means that we can make proper decisions. He's extremely clever. Means he can do all kinds of different things. Prabhupada say we're expert as devotees. We're expert. We can do all types of different tasks. And the last two are, he's always grateful. Isn't that interesting? Shri Krishna, one of his great qualities is that he's always grateful. Any person who's conscious of his friend's beneficent activities, never forgets his services, is someone who's grateful. And if you've ever met someone who's truly grateful, it's such a beautiful thing because they don't forget. Hey, do you remember when you did that? Do you remember when you helped me out here or whatever? I don't remember that. But you can feel in their heart that level of gratitude that's there. And this is Shri Krishna. And you hear that a lot in stories of Srila Prabhupada. He always remembered. And then the last four that we hear about often that only Shri Krishna has, which is why he was saying in this purport, listen, take my words for it. I came to you 3 times, and this is the fullest expression. These last 4 are the salient qualities. Bhima Prabhu played the flute yesterday in class. He can attract all living entities by playing his flute. Right? So this is Shri Krishna. He plays his flute. He's always surrounded by devotees with love of Godhead, always. He's not alone. He's always surrounded. He's the performer of wonderful varieties of pastimes. That's what we're here to hear, is these stories of his pastimes now. We're getting ready to hear his pastimes, which pull us material consciousness. He has a wonderful excellence of beauty, which cannot be rivaled anywhere. And to conclude, right, his beauty cannot be rivaled. It's so attractive. It's so beautiful. And the glimmers that we catch in this material atmosphere are sparks of that splendor, that sparks of that beauty. The intensity of attraction that Shri Krishna has pulls us fully in. So I told a long story, or I recited a long story, and according to Ananda Bihari Prabhu's time, I'm right on time at 7:45 to open it up for any thoughts, questions, reflections.
Beautiful class, Jai Giridhari Prabhu. Thank you for bringing us closer to Prabhupada. And yes, Srila Prabhupada is the one who we are trying to connect with on a regular basis. Beautiful. I was at the Brooklyn Temple yesterday, and they have this Prabhupada's room. That's a new thing that they have there. They have Prabhupada's original danda that he carried, his mridanga, and Gaurangi touched the mridanga, and she made her plushie touch the mridanga where Prabhupada touched it on the side. And his typewriter, recorder, everything is there. So beautiful. I made a little vow touching his danda. Srila Prabhupada, I'm not going to touch that thing again. I'm not going to tell you what it is, but I touched it to my forehead. Srila Prabhupada, I'm never touching that thing again. I'm never touching that thing again. So I'd like to request your blessing so I can stick to my vow. Please, devotees, I need help. I have multiple addictions, and I vowed to Srila Prabhupada's Danda yesterday that I'm not touching that thing again. So please bless me. Just wanted to share that. And with that, I open the floor to questions, corrections, chastisements. Bhima Prabhu, you have a chastisement for us? No? All right. Would anyone like to share anything?
Haribol, Jai.
Haribol, Yamuna.
I just want to, I feel like your class today was such a nice thread from Bhima Prabhu's class yesterday. We are getting into such intimate pastimes, and I did just feel so drawn into what you were saying. So thank you for the intimacy of sharing those stories with us. Even that you were speaking like softer, I actually appreciate it, because it's like, I can't walk across the room. I'm listening to this. Let me draw it in. And by linking us, of course, to Prabhupada, he wants to draw us closer. And so thank you so much for a wonderful class.
Thank you. Thank you for your amazing appreciation, as always.
Yeah, Giridhari Prabhu talks very softly like a radio host. The quality of sound is very good. It's like a radio show, a morning show. Adipurusha Prabhu. Unmute yourself, Adipurusha Prabhu, and make sure there is no Akashvani.
Hare Krishna, can you hear me
Yeah.
okay?
Yeah.
This close that door, please. We're trying. There's no tech person here, so that's all down all the way. Can you hear me now?
Tech.
Yeah. So it's so
Yes.
interesting. The concept of intimacy, because in this world, gosh, if we separate ourselves from Krishna, say it again. Of course, I can't hear you.
What did you talk into that one?
Talk into that one. I don't know how to do it. If you show me, I'll do it. You know what to do?
This is part of the comedy show every morning.
Yeah. The one on the left.
It's muted. It's already muted.
Adipurusha, go in the back of the tent.
It's impossible.
And shut everybody else down.
Bhima Prabhu's got his hand up.
Yeah, maybe we can take Bhima Prabhu's comment and correction, maybe.
Haribol?
Adipurusha Prabhu is dealing with Akashvani.
That's because he speaks from the heavens. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Jai Giridhari. The simple fact that you should have that book and read from it, when someone's given a class, sometimes I want to say this, I want to say that, but that you took the majority of time to speak of a pastime of Prabhupada's first female disciple, and the troubles that she went through, and the endearments and the intimate pastimes that she had, speaks to a wonderful consciousness you have of understanding everyone's heart, and how attractive that is, especially for the other Matajis, Prabhujinis in the movement, when they hear the glorification of other souls like themselves, and how Prabhupada said once that the mothers are my best disciples, because they can do anything. They can do anything. See, men are restricted because we're so fallen, we're so impulsive, and we're such idiots. But the mothers, they just have natural love. They just naturally. One would say, oh well, they're less intelligent, or whatever that was said. But it's as simple. It means that it's not about the intellect. It's about that simplicity of just going with it, that intuitive, instinctive nature that is present in the soul, to simply know what is right, what is beautiful, what is real. And you quoting from that book, reading from that book was very endearing. I actually have that on Kindle. And I'm like what Prabhupada said, one who has many books but reads none of them. Now I was listening to you and I'm like, I better read that book because there's nothing so informative as to see the dear hearts of the mothers in the movement and how they uplift us all. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Thank you. Thank you, Bhima Prabhu. It's so true. Yeah. The instinctive, the simplicity, the exchanges, the imagine, you can smell the fragrance of Prabhupada walking down the Bowery. Just what a juxtaposition. The intimacy of the saffron robe brushing against you. You can just imagine, 1966, Prabhupada's dhoti just slaps you a little bit. It's just so intense and so beautiful. And that's the memory that stays with you, right? That's the memory. What a heart. And I can appreciate so much that Prabhupada just taking a big finger full of whipped cream in the kitchen and smiling at her after. It's just so nice to hear. And these are her memories. These are the things that are the strongest inside of the heart. And that's the aspiration, that intensity of intimacy.
And it's funny that we say no sense gratification, but ultimately I've had more sense gratification in the movement than I've ever had anywhere else. The world, I'm sorry to use this French term, but the material world and what it has to offer sucks compared to what we get through the movement. It's so beautiful. Everything's so beautiful. Everyone is so beautiful. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Okay, ladies, it's your turn. Andrea. Andrea is sending us hearts, but that's not enough.
Angelica has
Your
her
camera
hand
on.
first.
I was cold. I'll go first.
Okay, Angelica.
And my dear sister Andrea will join me later. I was reminded of what I was hearing yesterday, actually, and it was a lecture on qualities of Srila Prabhupada. And one of the qualities that was exemplified and spoken about was humility, but it was really specific because I feel that oftentimes we find ourselves having a very specific image of these qualities, whereas Prabhupada was so dynamic in exhibiting them. And one instance was actually shown, and it was spoken by Bhuta Pavana Prabhu. And he was sharing how Prabhupada was exhibiting his humility by actually walking like the king of the world, because only through that way, that was what was serving the moment. Because being in New York City in the 60s, if he was to be actually acting like a humble Swamiji, everybody would treat him like a doormat or like a homeless bum. But because he was so aristocratic and because he was so confident of the message that he came to share, that was his expression of humility. So I was just reminded of that actually through Krishna's grace, and I wanted to share that. And of course, he exemplified so many of Vaishnava qualities in such a dynamic way that when I read his pastimes, even hearing this one, it's like after each of those, behind each one of those details, there's so much of a depth of principles and essence of understanding bhakti as a very dynamic force that really shapes the character. So thank you so much for your class and for sharing those pastimes.
Thank you. It's a great point. What
I think we have
serves
this
is
working. Can you hear
humble.
me okay?
Yes. Hare
Yeah.
Krishna.
The thing about intimacy, it's the opposite of being alone. And in this world, everybody's actually lonely because they're separated from each other. Even if there's a big crowd of people, there's no contact. There's no way of showing love. There's no idea who that person is and what they really would be good for them, So Prabhupada opens the door to Krishna consciousness and devotional service, and that's our relationship. And then we're connected. And there's that one minister who was imprisoned and put in solitary confinement in Romania, and he had this experience of the communion of saints. And he was they wouldn't let him talk to anybody. They had him in solitary confinement for years. And he said, as long as I was glorifying Krishna, as long as I was praising the Lord, then I was connected to every other devotee who ever lived at any time in any place. And I was there with them. And then as soon as I started complaining, bonk, I was alone. So we have this capacity to go from the communion of saints to be lonely. I'm lonely. Nobody loves me. And, I'm going to go out and eat worms and stuff like that, So let's get to the platform of love and hang in there, right? Sorry to talk so much. I'll go to Prabhupada.
Thank you, Adi Prabhu. The intimacy of our actual connection. Yeah, so important. That's how we actually become intimate. Thank you for reminding us of that.
And we try to hold on to each other's bodies or mentally or emotionally, but actually the relationship is devotional service. And then we're very close. Otherwise, even if you're in the same bed with somebody, you might as well be on a different planet because you're just not connected. Devotional service is the life of the soul. All glories to Prabhupada. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Yeah, Srila Prabhupada was very compassionate. He even let them have the cat for a while, right? But what's that cat's name?
Schizobrenner.
Schizobrenner.
Yeah.
Yeah, Schizobrenner Kijai. We hope you're okay wherever you are. You got tremendous blessing by being in Prabhupada's association. So Schizobrenner, Hare Krishna to you. So would anyone else like to share? Ladies, it's your call. Yes.
Hare Krishna, Jai Prabhu.
Haribo.
Thank you so much for taking the time to share from that book. As so many people have already said, I think it's just so full of nectar. And I rarely have dreams with Srila Prabhupada. Like since the time that I've been in the movement since 2015, I can count on my fingers how many times I've had dreams with Prabhupada. And I have had a dream with Prabhupada. Every time I read so much from that book right before going to bed, I'll have a dream with him. And I'm not very learned, so I don't know what that means, but there's some potency there to reading the stories. And if you really let yourself read them, like with your heart open, and you can sometimes feel the tears coming in your eyes and you can really like be there, it's such a gift. And I'm just so grateful to all the Vaishnavis who took the time to put together this book. I know that Malati was the one that like had the idea, and then all her sisters kind of came in and put it together. And when we read these books, and I feel like these books are also really accessible to anyone. Like you don't have to be a devotee to get that sense of love, that radical personalism that was there. It's just such a beautiful book. So thank you so much.
Yeah, you're welcome. Thank you. Yeah, this is a very potent experience to take in the deep hearts and the simplicity of that's what always jumps out to me is the great simplicity and clarity of heart that's there with each of these Vaishnavis. They're just, I did this. Now looking back, what's left? Prabhupada and my affection for him and trying to please him. It's so beautiful. Thank you.
It reminds me of one realization that Giridhari Prabhu shared, I don't know, a few years ago on his podcast. He was saying, I did this, I did that, and what's left? So his father, tell us what your father told you about the shifts. Remember that one?
Yeah. He said he was practically meaning he just loved to work, and he had to work these things called swing shifts, if you're familiar with that, where you work a day shift, which is, 7 to 5 or something like that, and then you work afternoon shift, you start at 12 and then you finish at midnight, and then you work they call them midnights, where you go in at 10 or 11 and then you come back at 8 in the morning. So every month they'd have to work these swing shifts, and he just was known for how hard he worked. And so he got all this 40 years proving that his collar was blue, right? This is how hard I work. And then he just shared with me maybe 2 years back. He said, where did all those shifts go? I said, wow, that's deep. That's deep. Yeah. So much endeavor for that, but where did it all go? So thank you, Nanda Bihari.
Yeah, our morning shifts here on the morning class will not go anywhere. They're with us. The Bhagavad Gita says. Yeah.
These are staying. These ones are etched in eternity.
Yeah. Yeah. All right, Angelica, you have your hand raised. Is that from before? Okay.
No, it's second thought, but do we have enough time?
We can take one more. Yeah.
Okay, so this is a question, and it's simply like we are reading those pastimes, and they are so personal, and many of Prabhupada's disciples or other our current Acharya's disciples can share so many of those stories of like personal association. And simultaneously, I'm thinking about those exalted personalities, and right now who comes to me is Niranjan Swami, who saw Prabhupada, I think, once or very few times. But how do we reconcile this maybe natural desire to associate with Vapu of the spiritual master by hearing those pastimes, with also just wanting to serve them and their instructions? And I feel like it's a little bit hard, because I feel like both of those desires are there. But also in Prabhupada's teachings, I know that he would have a few disciples that he actually would teach them constantly to detach themselves from his from attraction or from attachment to his body, because he really wanted them to stick to his instructions after he leaves his body. So could you speak a little bit on that?
There's something so powerful about being around the form of the spiritual master. But as Adi Purush Prabhu was saying, there's nothing as intimate as following the instructions. The closeness that you feel is absolutely, it's even closer. And my mother-in-law, actually, Mulika, she never met Prabhupada. And she's an incredibly deep, chaste disciple of Srila Prabhupada. So I know from her personal example and just experiencing it that by following the instructions, and then also regularly being in association with the devotees, those things are, the level of intimacy it's according to the desire that we have. People that were very close to Prabhupada, who may have physically might not have the level of intimacy as someone, as you said, like a Niranjan Maharaj, or even, my good mother-in-law. It's more a question of that desire and that experience. You have to have the experience, and you start to get a sense of the difference between Vapu and Vani, and the sense of non-difference between Vapu and Vani when the instruction is followed. And what's interesting is that when they speak, these our spiritual masters, when they speak, it's not just that they're speaking to Nanda Bihari. Well, I gave him this really personal, intimate instruction. The reality is that in there, that instruction is for all of us, and if we can imbibe that, then we can become that close and that dear to that personality. How many people did Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati tell to go to the West? Just a vast amount of his disciples, and Srila Prabhupada really picked it up and took it to heart. How close was he to his spiritual master? It was incredibly, intensely close, because he followed the instruction, not because he was near his form. So both of those have to be cultivated while the spiritual master is still on this planet. We should dive at the opportunity. We should throw caution to the wind. We should desire to serve the body and help in any possible way. Absolutely, that should be very, very high on the list. And then also recognizing and realizing that the instructions are eternal, and that's our actual intimacy in that sense as well. But while the spiritual master is here, you should be incredibly enthusiastic to help.
Yeah, beautifully said, Giridhari Prabhu. Srila Prabhupada said, I'm in my book. So we can say that Srila Prabhupada is in the morning class. Srila Prabhupada is in the kirtan. Srila Prabhupada is in the prasadam plate. Srila Prabhupada is in our chant, in our japa, our intimate time with Krishna. And Prabhupada, Srila Prabhupada is there. He's as good, right?
He's as good. He's on the dust of that street that you're walking in.
Yeah.
I can see that. He's definitely walked on that street.
Oh, yeah. That's our meditation. Okay, Giridhari Prabhu, beautiful class. Thank you very much for taking the time to glorify Krishna with us. And thanks everyone for tuning in, for sending your hearts, for keeping your cameras on and off. We don't care as long as you're hearing. That's the thing. Bhima Prabhu, I'm here to see you. I'm waiting for you. Yeah.
Coming down. I'm on my way.
All right. Cool.
I love New York.
Cool.
Giridhari, Giridhari, wonderful. It's so wonderful to see you. You're beautiful. You're beautiful.
Hare Krishna.
Okay.
Hare Krishna.
Have a wonderful day, everybody. Love you all. Hari Bol. Hare Krishna.
Thank you so much, Prabhu. Hare Krishna.